Just really pleased to be able to spend some time with you, and please feel free to ask me any questions you like. Last time I was in China was for the Xi'an Paxis conference, and I really enjoyed spending time in the nature in Xi'an. We walked up Huashen with my daughter, and maybe one day if I get to Zhejiang, I can walk around some of the lakes. I know it's very beautiful, and I look forward to one day being there. Likewise, if you come to Queensland, I hope you get to see our beautiful beaches and spend time in our nature. It's very pretty, and the campus where I work is, there's a picture here you can see, is also very pretty. Similar to you, you have the cherry blossoms, and you have jacaranda, which makes our campus look very pretty. Now, in our journal, our goal is to publish and champion the finest scholarship in the field. That's the aim of MISQ Quarterly. And the very first sentence ever printed in the journal was saying that with this issue, the MISQ Quarterly breaks new ground in the information systems field. And that is still our aim. So in every article, in every issue, and every year, we attempt to continue to break new ground, to push the field forward. And our editorial board members believe deeply and strongly in our field. We believe more than just processing papers and handling papers, but that we are institutional custodians responsible for nurturing and advancing our field's top scholarship. So that's the purpose of the journal and the purpose of our editors. The journal, under Arun Rai's leadership for the previous 5 years, worked very hard on improving the impact of our work, improving the range of work that we publish, improving the speed of our processes, and we made very good progress on each of these dimensions over 5 years. Over the next 3 years, during my term as editor, I am continuing all of the efforts of Professor Rai, and we are also working on additional initiatives for stakeholders. So we're continuing the work on our capabilities, and we're complementing that with work on stakeholders. You can read the editor's comments from March this year where I explained all of those initiatives, and our goal essentially is to serve authors to be the most author-focused journal possible. What that means is if you have your best work, why would you trust us with it? We want you to want to send it to us because we are the most author-focused. We believe in you, we trust you, we want your work. That's the culture we want to have in the journal. We also want to have a culture of serving our external stakeholders, business, policy, the wider world, to make the world a better place, to be the most impactful journal possible. And then to serve science itself, to lead our field in responsible research, responsible scholarship, to advance science through our work. So they're the 3 stakeholder groups we're trying to help. Now, on the next few slides, I will run through some initiatives, but this was all in the editor's comments in March this year, so I won't describe these. I will go through these very quickly. This is just to give you examples of all the different things we're doing to improve on each of these dimensions. Maybe I'll highlight one of them on each slide rather than go through all of them, just to give you an example of what we're doing. So on this slide, what I would like to highlight is a bullet in the middle which says, foster a culture of highlighting problems and championing imperfections. What I mean by that is one big problem with research papers that are submitted to the journal is they're written defensively, where authors try to not open up about problems, and then reviewers try to identify problems. And so the whole process becomes defensive and, if you like, antagonistic. What we want to have a culture of is where authors are open about problems and editors and reviewers champion papers, because these problems are generative. They will generate future research that addresses these problems. So we need a culture where we will not just acknowledge a problem, but highlight a problem and champion those papers that have important messages and are still imperfect, because that will generate large amounts of future research. So that's the culture we are wanting to highlight, and that will help authors, because authors do not need to feel that they have to have perfect research. They do not need to feel that they need to hide their problems. They can be open about it. With serving our external stakeholders, we're having many initiatives to improve our work for stakeholders. And one example I'll give is the first bullet point here, having impact statements and practical implications. So during next year, we will start an initiative where we will require authors to simply state in the submissions why this research would make a difference for external stakeholders, some policy, practice, and so on, and make sure that they can clearly state that potential impact. And then in our review process, we want to make sure that when we are attending to theory, when we're attending to methods, when we're attending to literature review discussions, that we're not distorting that practical message of the paper. We're not masking the practical. We're going to highlight or use theory and methods in service of the purpose of the paper, rather than reducing the paper's impact through our attempts to focus on theory and method. And so this will help the impact of our paper and the relevance of our paper and the importance of our paper for our external stakeholders. This is just one example of what we're doing. And then leading our fields in responsible research. Again, I'll just pick one example, which is the infrastructure for research transparency. So you may have seen in, and I hope you have seen in our June editorial, we're bringing in an initiative for research transparency. So this involves making data available, making materials available, code available, these sorts of things. It's become very common across all of the sciences. I expect it will become very common in our field. And we will be having these policies implemented from 1st of January. I encourage you to read the editorial in June. And we had a session on AIS in practice that you may have attended even. We had a large number of authors attend that, and I will describe it in more detail later in these slides. So through all of these initiatives, we are trying to improve our work, but we already do quite well. We're already seen as a good journal in the field and widely respected. In the next few slides, I'll just show some evidence of that. The senior scholars of the AIS do a survey every year of the quality of the journal review processes. And I have not shown here the scores of the other journals, so I don't provide the names. But this just shows that MIS Quarterly is typically ranked very high. So in this slide, it shows the Net Promoter Score. Essentially, people promote MISQ very well as a journal in the senior scholars community. In review quality and timeliness, they again rated, I've hidden the other journals here, but in MISQ we were typically rated very high in terms of the review quality and review timeliness. And then in publishing interesting research, we were seen as publishing very interesting research, again, by the senior scholars community. So we're doing quite well. There has been interesting shifts in the journal impact factor. So if you are at a university where they look at what are called the GIFs, the journal impact factor, the 2-year GIF has been changing dramatically over the last couple of years. And you can see this in the graphs I've shown below. So in 2017, we were the highest, so MISQ was on the left, we were the highest impact factor. You can see in 2018 and 19, the mean impact factor was relatively constant, like the height of the columns is relatively similar, the mean, across all of the different journals. But just in the last couple of years, it's really been increasing, especially in 2020, and some of the journals have been dramatically increasing their journal impact factors. This is on the 2-year GIFs. If we look at the 5-year GIF, it's a somewhat similar story. So in, say, 2017, we were, by far the largest impact factor. And then more recently, some of the other journals have been increasing their impact factor. These patterns are kind of interesting. And for those of you who maybe do research on scientometrics, the study of these metrics, it is quite interesting to sort of see and understand what's happening in the world of metrics. What we're focusing on at the quarterly at the moment is just making sure we publish the very best research, and rather than trying to chase these particular metrics. But it is interesting, and we're aware of some of these changes. And we know that at some schools it can be important, these metrics, and so we're aware of it and trying to do strategies that will ensure that our impact factors remain good. What I would say for those of you interested in the field of information systems and interested in my perception of the state of MIS Quarterly is that now is a golden time in the field. It's a very exciting time. It's perhaps the most exciting time we've had because we study the phenomena of our time. It's a real opportunity for us, but it's also a real responsibility. We now have the ability to tell policymakers, to tell business about how they should run their organizations in a way that's more relevant than ever. So much of society now depends on the skills we have, the skills we teach our students, the findings we put in our research papers. We've never been more relevant. So that's a great opportunity and a great responsibility. MISQ is in a very healthy state, so please send us your best papers. We're excited to have them. In terms of current initiatives, what I would say is to please read our June editorial and our author FAQ on research transparency. We've put a lot of work into this, and it will be an important initiative from next year. Another initiative is our special issue on social justice. If you have an interest in social justice, improving social justice, please submit your work to our special issue. We're excited about it and will support it very strongly. Another initiative we have just announced is our Scholarly Development Academy. You may have seen this. We just posted it on IS World earlier in the week, and we will roll this out in different cohorts over a number of years. The first cohort will focus on untenured female academics, post-PhD. The second cohort will focus on the Global South, and hopefully this will be a great success, and we will have additional cohorts over time. In our December editorial, you'll see we have initiatives on diversity, equity, inclusion, and next year we will have innovations in our editorial process where we will allow authors to opt in to engage in innovations and editors to opt in to edit papers that are engaging in particular innovations. So stay tuned for that next year. One common question I get from junior authors is, how do I get to know MISQ? What's the way into the journal? So first one is to attend workshops like this. So thank you very much for having me. Another one is to attend our author development workshops. We have a mid-year workshop, and we had 175 this year. We have a reviewer development workshop. We have around 150 this year in December and November. And you are very welcome to come. So please look out for these this year, next year, and we welcome you. again, please look out for the Scholarly Development Academy. Many of you in this call could be able to attend. Another way is to read our research curations. I don't know if you all know this, but we have curated approximately 40% of our journal already, and there's more on the way. So if you want to know what does MISQ say about a particular topic, please look at our research curations. We may have already summarized it. We may already have curated it and given all the references and how to read it. It's a wonderful way to learn what we have said about particular topics and how to quickly get up to speed. So please use this if you're a doctoral student or a junior academic, or if you're a senior academic and you have a doctoral class, use these research curations because it will help you and your students to quickly learn what has MISQ said about a particular topic. Please also read our editorials. If you're new to the field, you want to know what we're doing at MISQ, all of our editorials are free. You can just download them. It's perhaps the best way to find out what are the editors like me thinking and what are we trying to achieve. So please read our editorials. Also, please get to know our board members. We have a wonderful editorial board, and there are many from China that you can get to know, and you can ask questions, and you can learn about the board from these wonderful scholars. And I am sure that they would be very willing to help and spread word about what MIS Quarterly is doing and help answer any questions you might have about the journal. We also have lots of information on the MISQ website about roles for authors, for instructions for how to submit your work. Probably the most disappointing thing an editor can receive is to receive a submission where it's very clear that the author has not looked at the instructions, has not read the material about what they're supposed to do. So if you are going to submit to MISQ, please read the instructions, please read our materials describing how we do our work. All right. Now what I'll do is just provide some statistics from the last couple of years. So we publish work from all around the world. You can see here some information on publications from Region 1, Region 2, Region 3. And so these regions are the AIS regions. So Region 1 is North America, Region 2, etc. And you can see in Region 3, China is by far the largest publisher, but we're still a long way behind the US in terms of publications. And but it's growing, and it's China is higher than any country in Europe by far, higher than Canada by far. So it's really wonderful to see all of these publications coming from China. We also are proud at MISQ that we are not a club. For instance, one question that authors may have is, do you need to be an established author to publish in MISQ? And if you look at the statistics, the answer is no. Many of our papers are published by people who have never published in MISQ before. In fact, roughly half of the authors in MISQ have never published in MISQ before. So the journal keeps growing. Also, if you look at 2019 and 20, you can see that 10% of the author teams, so the author team might be 2 authors on a paper, 3 authors on a paper, it's at 4 authors on a paper. 10% of the papers, none of the authors had a paper in MISQ before. 38%, one of the authors might have had something. So it's maybe there's 3 authors, one author's published 1 paper before, and that's 38% of our papers. And then 69%, so almost 70% of the papers where the team, the author team, on average had from 0 to 2 papers. So what this shows is the vast majority of our papers are from people who do not have much experience with the journal, which is wonderful. It means that the journal keeps growing. And these numbers have improved from that last year, from the 2019 to 20 to 2020 to 21. It's even stronger. So we have even more papers that are from new authors and new that haven't submitted before or haven't had papers accepted before. This slide is there's lots of information on this slide, but I will just highlight a few things that are helpful to know. So if we look at the top of the slide, we can see the numbers of papers we accept and reject in a given year. You can see the vast majority of papers are rejected, which makes sense because it's a good quality journal. We accept very few papers. However, if you look at the table below, you can see the time it takes to get papers accepted or rejected. And you can see what we need to do to improve as well. So if you look at the first row, it says average cycle time for decision. On the left, it's 68 days. On the right, it's 66 days. It's improving slightly. What that means is, on average, it takes us a little over 2 months from when you submit a paper to when you get the decision back. So in the old days, it might have been 3 months, 4 months, and you're still waiting. But at MISQ, we want you to feel that roughly 2 months is all you need. Submit it, and you should be able to hear back in roughly 2 months. So on average, that's true. Unfortunately, we still have a big standard deviation, so some papers take longer, but we're constantly trying to improve performance. Let's then look at the next rows. Average cycle time for first round decision. Again, it's a little bit lower, so 60 days in 1920, 62 days in 2021. So again, around 2 months. Average cycle time for the first round of rejecting a paper. So this is a bit lower, and it makes sense that it's lower because sometimes it's clear that the paper needs to be rejected, and so the decision-making process is simpler. That's why they're a bit quicker. Then look at the second last row, average cycle time for accepting an article. So this is how long does it take from when you submit the paper to when you finally get accepted. And you can see that in the papers we accepted in 2019 to 20, it was on average 3 years. And then for the 2021, it was on average 2.65 years. So this is too long because if we are going to be a contemporary field, we do not want to take 3 years to accept an article. So one of my major objectives is to keep bringing this number down. However, there are limits to how far we can bring it down, but still, my goal is to help bring that down. Then look at the last row, the average time for rejecting an article. So it has 107 days in 19 to 20, 75 days in 2021. And you can see the standard deviation as well. What this means is that even though it is taking us 2.5, 3 years to accept an article, it doesn't take that long to have an article rejected, which is good news because if you are in the process and you make a revision, you get another opportunity for a revision, what this means is it's very likely that your paper will be accepted. It may still take time, but most papers that are rejected very quickly. So if you can get a paper submitted, if you can get a revision opportunity, maybe a second revision opportunity, we know that it takes a lot of work, but this work will be valuable. It will pay off in an acceptance. The acceptance is still taking too long, but if you're unlikely to be rejected once it passes a certain amount of time. That's what the statistics show. Professor Shiau asked me to tell you what I thought about the IS field and what we want in the journal. So the following is some of my concerns and opportunities. First, it's very important that the IS field leverages our strengths. I believe strongly that we need to fulfill our role in society by conveying the true complexity and opportunity of IS phenomena, so computerization, ICT-enabled change, digital transformation. What I mean by the true complexity is that we are the field. The IS field is the field that has been studying this the longest. It is not the computer science field or the management field or the operations field. It is the IS field that has been studying the complexity and opportunity of ICT phenomena in society and business since the beginning. So we should be the field that can say this, have the most true findings, the true complexity, the true opportunity, and that is a big responsibility for our field that we need to keep leveraging that strength. The second main point I want to emphasize is to focus on issues, not methods. So I have a concern that some of our field's brightest minds, some of our youngest, brightest scholars, instead of focusing on the first point here, they're focusing instead on methods, and they're asking, how can I get data that will allow me to pass all of these methodological expectations? And that is simply the wrong question to ask. And I really hope that authors will focus on the first bullet point here, to leverage our strengths to conduct important work, and then we will celebrate that work through our publication process. So we need strong methods, but methods are not our strength. The second major concern I have is the direction in which academia is going. So if you read my editorial co-authored with Marie-Clara Stein in September, we talked about the emotions of scholarship and the emotions of research. And I'm concerned that for some scholars, the meaning of academia and the soul of academia is being lost. And it is very important that we care for each other, that we find meaning, that we find passion in our research, because then that will enable us to produce the very best scholarship. And on this slide, I show two different ways of looking at academia. One is a life of the mind. This is a very classical vision of academia, and there are books and art and many things describing this perspective. A different and a negative perspective on academia is that we're just feeding the machine, the machine of publish or perish, and that it's unhealthy and will not lead to good outcomes. I used to think that we were just on the left, we should just focus on the life of the mind. But more recently, I've realized that there's a more important element, which is what I've shown at the bottom there, which is the emotions of scholarship, and what I talk about as the emotion, heart, and soul of scholarship. So it's now my focus to try to think of ways in which MISQ can help support, encourage, empathize with, and help the emotion, heart, and soul of scholarship in the IS field. This is a major concern and objective of mine. And with that, I'll say thank you, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Very pleased to have the opportunity to spend time with you, and once again, feel free to ask me anything you like.
Oh, okay.